So let's just take a minute and kind of come back. Sensing your body again. You don't have to even close your eyes if you don't want. Just notice how it is now. That's the thing, we can always come back. Because there's always something. There's always something happening. You know, sometimes it's pleasant, sometimes it's unpleasant, some, neutral, some combination. But there's always something happening in this present moment. And we often find it to be the sort of least important thing. You know. And again, because the TV programming in our mind is so much more compelling, really. I actually thought maybe one thing we would talk about tonight is a subject I've been exploring more lately, which is what in Buddhism they call exuberance. And exuberance, it's an interesting thing. There's, in Buddhism there's many lists. Like the Buddha apparently was a big list maker. And one of the lists that I remember when I first came across it, I found it really kind of caught my interest. It's the Brahma Viharas, the four heavenly abodes. So it's metta, right, like loving kindness, compassion, mudita, which is translated as sympathetic joy, and equanimity, or it's called upekkha. And so that's a pretty cool list. And then there's the obvious, it's like the four like enemies of that, the four opposites of that, right? So, obvious, you're right. So, hatred and I don't know, whatever they are, right? But it's but obvious, right? Like, okay, the opposite of those. But the list, I remember when I read it, I was like, ooh, that's clever, which is the four near enemies, the near enemies of those. So what that means is it's four states that resemble them, and you can think that they are them, but they're not. So for loving kindness, it's possessiveness, right? So it's that fine line between love and possessiveness. I'm sure whoever your partner is has mentioned this to you at times. Or perhaps you've mentioned it to them. Anyways, but we won't, that's a whole thing. So then the other, the near enemy of compassion is pity, right? So again, it kind of sounds like compassion, right? When you feel pity for someone, it's like, yeah, it's like easily mistaken for compassion, but it's not. And the thing with pity, like, because it's close, but pity has this tone to it where it's like, it doesn't apply to me though. Like, poor you with all your problems, and I pity you kind of from above, but I'm not in on that with you. Whereas compassion is more like, no, I'm empathizing because we're kind of in it together, and even if I'm not having that problem at the moment, like, I know what that's like, I've been there. I'll come back to mudita, which is the sympathetic joy. And then the fourth one, which was upekkha, or equanimity, the near enemy of equanimity is apathy. And again, it can look like that, right? Especially in Buddhist circles. It's like, well, I'm just really unattached, and I don't, you know. But it's really, it's like, well, you just don't really give a shit, is what. It's not the same as equanimity. Equanimity is like you're very present. You're just not, you're not being tugged and pulled by all these kind of impulses. But you're aware of them and you're very present, right? So the one I wanted to talk about tonight, which is interesting, I found actually particularly, probably the most interesting discernment, which is for sympathetic joy, or joy, you know, or joy in general, and the near enemy being exuberance. It's kind of interesting, no? So exuberance. Because a lot of times in my life, I'm very subject to exuberance. And I always thought I was just joyful. But thanks to the Buddha, I now know better. It's a subtle difference, but the main difference is that the sympathetic joy he's talking about, and he makes actually this distinction about sympathetic joy. We don't even have a word for it, like one word, like mudita. Is sympathetic joy means joy for the well-being of others. You know, so you're feeling a joy because someone else is happy. Now, the thing with joy, the kind of joy he's talking about, whether it's for someone else or just, you know, there's a lot of joy in just being, is that it's very much in the here and now. It's actually, it can be fairly peaceful. And so sometimes, you know, if you're present and you're sensing your body and you're just in the present moment, you know, whatever, and it's a beautiful day, or you're happy, or you know, there's joy happening. It's just a joyful experience. It's not necessarily about something as much as it is kind of the flavor and texture of joy itself. Now, I mean it's not about anything. I mean that by contrast with exuberance, so exuberance, by comparison, is more of a kind of excitement about what you think. Often it's about what you think is going to happen. So exuberance is most often, you know, as you just sat for a half hour and you noticed all the thoughts and all the stories going on in our minds, right? So exuberance is basically when those stories just get really good, right? Because sometimes the story is really good. It's like it's this awesome, all this awesome stuff I'm gonna do, or you know, you just get these great ideas and these great plans, and you know, I think of it as in that narrative about, you know, each of us in our own minds. It's when we're winning, you know. And that story is so exciting and so kind of thrilling that there's all this excitement. It's this kind of excitement, but when you feel it in your body, often in those moments, if you feel it in your body, it's actually fairly uncomfortable. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever checked that out? It's actually, you know, it's a kind of anxiety, really. It's just like anticipatory excitement about how good it's going to be, and sort of how good I am, and just, you know. And often, you know, when there's like a real high to it. That's why if you're ever around someone in that state, if you're around with someone, they're exuberant, you notice they don't like it if you kind of ask them to pause. You know, they're kind of on this roll and they're telling you about this, and you're like, hey, I mean, that's great, let's just, well, I'm a meditation teacher, so it's something I might do. I'm like, yeah, that's great, let's just take a breath real quick. Now, no. You know, and there's just kind of, it's almost like a manic kind of vibe. That experience. And so for me personally, I've kind of really learned about this. I mean, I've heard about this over the years, but I only got interested in it, like really wanted to look at it relatively recently, like in the last couple of years. Because most of the time, for most of my years of practice, I never thought it was a problem. Because for me, it was like, what are you talking about? Like, now it's good. This is why I practice. When I came to practice, I was dealing with, depression and feeling down and, that side of it, being upset and anxiety and all this stuff. Hey, once I'm feeling good and I'm excited and I got great ideas, it's like, cool, I'm done. Right? I mean, that's it. That's why I started practicing. So now I'm feeling great. I'm in a great mood. I had no real interest in this topic. And when other people would bring it up, if I was in an exuberant state, I just couldn't believe that these people are just trying to rain on my parade, It's like, man, these Buddhists it's really a downer, man. They don't understand inspiration when they see it. And it was a couple of things. It was actually, the more I started to sense my body in this present kind of way that we've been talking about today, where you find how nice it is when you can really land in your being and really be in the body and be in this seat. I found that state of exuberance I would get into was really at odds with that. That actually I wasn't settled. And it kind of had this, there was really quite a lot of anxiety underneath it. And one of that, it has this feeling, because it's kind of a high, and you're kind of on this high, and then you inevitably, much sooner than you'd like, you can feel it slipping away a little, right? Because how long does it really last, And all of a sudden, like, it's just kind of not, and you need to keep it going, right? You know that feeling where you're like, no, I gotta keep it going. It's like it's already slipping away. And so I found that my relationship and the way I was holding this excitement was a real, this is what we call clinging, really grasping at this joy and really wanting to hold on to it and capitalize on it and kind of make all these plans of all this great stuff I'm going to do. But really it was like, it's already slipping away. It's already, like, where do I get the next hit of this? Like, I need a new dose of inspiration, right? And so I would notice as I felt it more in the body that actually it wasn't comfortable, and actually I couldn't just be with it in a way that was peaceful. And I noticed that when I had real joy, this mudita, I was like, wow, it's actually quite different. Because the feeling with mudita is that there's nothing to get. There's nothing to do about it. It's just nice. It's like, you're walking, someone's got a big bush of jasmine halfway down this block, and I was kind of, you just get hit by this beautiful smell. And it's like, that's it. They're like, but what do I do about it? It's like, nothing, that's it. You get to smell that right now. And it's nice. And that's it. But how do I bottle it? One of my teachers when I was in Thailand, this monk I lived with, used to say, that peace is actually the highest happiness. That peace, that when you actually are in the body and you're sensing this being, that peace, the feeling of peace is actually the sweetest. It actually feels really good. There's like a soothing, spacious kind of feeling to it, as opposed to this exuberance, which, again, when you tune into it, it's quite tense, and there's kind of all this discomfort, which is part of what creates that grasping and that kind of manic planning and grasping, and there's a kind of a egocentrism to it, because it's all about, this is so great and I'm so great and I'm going to do these great things, and and usually if you look a little closer, and everyone will see how great I am, right? It's just got that tilt to it. And then the other thing that caused me to look at it is a lot of times the choices and the decisions I would make in these exuberant states were not so smart. And plenty of times I've done things where later I've regretted it and been like, man, that really messed that one up. And it was so hard for me to grasp because it felt so right. It felt so good. I understood when I'm not in a good place and I do dumb shit, that has always made sense to me, which is what I've always practiced with. Right, these unwholesome kind of negative states, right? So I meditate and do all these things so I'm not caught in them so much. So I'm not acting out like my rage or, lust or whatever. But man, exuberance those things seemed like a genuinely good idea. You know what I mean? It was I'm on a roll. This is awesome. So when something would then blow up in my face, it was really amazing. I was like, how was that wrong? How did I, really? I'm the bad guy in this scenario? But I was so happy. But I was in such a good mood. So I started examining it more closely out of necessity. And luckily the Buddha's got a whole teaching on it, so it was good. I felt like I wasn't alone. It wasn't unique to me. I find great comfort in anything I read from the Buddha, because I'm like, well, apparently it was true in India 2,500 years ago. So it's not that personal to me or to any of us. The other thing, just to kind of wrap up that topic, is the way I work with it. One thing that's very helpful is actually this development of equanimity around it. But what's really helpful is to have compassion for it. I find actually with any of these things, if when you see them in yourself, any of what the Buddha calls unwholesome states, greed, hatred, lust, exuberance, any of these things, if the orientation is that oh, these are bad and I'm sort of bad if I have these, kind of like what we were touching on a little bit earlier with the thoughts, that's a terrible approach, because it's just going to create more conflict inside you, right? Because now you're kind of sort of cultivating this judging entity that's now armed with the power of Buddhism, which is the worst judging, the worst inner judgment is spiritual judgment, don't you think? Because now, very nuanced states of mind are up for scrutiny. So you want to come to whatever's happening with a friendliness and a compassion, which allows you to understand, like, hey, what's happening here? And with exuberance, what I found, where I really needed to bring the compassion piece in, was to appreciate how seductive that state is. Because we want that really badly, you know? For one thing, if you've been feeling bad and you've been practicing and working with, very difficult states, like for me, when it was suddenly free and light and all this exuberance would come in, it was fantastic. You know what I mean? Like I can really appreciate why for so many years, of course I wasn't interested in, poking a hole in that balloon. Because it was like, dude, I've been suffering for so long, I actually feel good for a change. And then, like I was saying, those plans and all those stories, when the story gets good, and this TV show in the mind about us, when that character who we take ourselves to be is winning, it's pretty awesome, right? And so I found that my capacity to put that down and not be seduced by it really came with actually really holding with compassion and understanding just how much I long for those states. Just trying to be like, no, don't do that. That's not helpful, because at the end of the day, the part that wants them is going to win out, because it's got the keys to the mechanism, right? It's in there. So when it would be like more like, oh yeah, here it comes. Here they come. Here are all these stories and all this what they call futurizing. It's a fun Buddhist term, futurizing, right? And you're just in the future and just having a blast. And then the other thing that was helpful is I would do these long retreats where you go and you just sit in silence for any week, months, whatever. And that's where I would get lots of exuberance, because you meditate after a while and your mind is clear, and suddenly it's just got all this energy and all these awesome ideas about what I'm going to do once I get off retreat. And you make all these plans, like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this. And after doing, many of these, I noticed this one little detail, which is none of that shit ever happened. Like, not even a little bit. Like, you come off, it's like a month later, whatever you were thinking that one time, it's like suddenly reality is there, and you're dealing with whatever's coming up and this and that, and you couldn't have possibly foreseen, all these details. And I remember just noticing time and time again, and I would, it would happen again, and I would think, no, come on, but this time. But this really is a great idea. I mean, this is brilliant. Nope. And I've talked to many other meditators, and they all agree. Everyone I've talked to is like, yeah, it's pretty much how it works. And so I find that one way to understand it is that this exuberance, which begets all this futurizing and all these fantasies about the future. It's sort of, how we even say psychologically now, we'll say, oh, it's being projected out into the future. And that word projected is interesting, because the image I actually get is of a literal projector, like a film projector, where this, light is being projected onto a screen that's, got all this stuff floating around and all these colors and, actors and stuff's happening. But really, that's just a projection, right? And it's all coming from this source, from the projector itself. So in this case, it's like you're the projector. And in the imagination, all these ideas of the future are being projected. And so what I invite you to do is next time you're feeling it, is see if you can actually come back, bring your awareness back to the body and really to this moment, and feel the joy that's underneath it. So a lot of times, like, you may think something's a brilliant idea. But what I found you can do instead is actually focus on the feeling of brilliance itself. Focus on the feeling of inspiration itself. There's a way to take any kind of thought proliferation about the future or the past, and to track it back to the actual experience in the moment out of which all these thoughts are arising. There's always a present moment kind of root to whatever the stories and projections are. Any questions about this? Does that make sense? Jim?
Yeah, I guess, how do you tell the difference between, good fantasizing and, what you're talking about? Because, there's, things actually, like the center wouldn't exist if someone had this idea at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And, manifested it. But,
I think one really good way is to notice how in your body you are or aren't. Because actually an idea like that, it doesn't take very long. You're sitting there and you're like, hey, it'd be good to open a center. That's it.
easy to say, hard to do.
But we had to do a lot, right? There was a lot of it actually wasn't a lot of ideas as much as actions. But I think the big thing is noticing, can you stay in your body and still sense the body and the breath? And then there's these ideas that come. And at what point do the ideas just kind of swallow you up? And you're not actually present at all anymore. Just like absorbed into that. And it has this manic kind of quality to it. So I watch how whatever I'm thinking or doing, how it's affecting my physiology. And I find that that's been a great kind of litmus test for the truth of what's happening. Just to notice what's it doing to me. Because it was interesting. Once I was practicing for however many years, there was a lot of things I discovered in my life that I thought I liked, and even people I thought I liked. But then as I got more aware of my body and would watch, I'm like, wow, I'm actually super uncomfortable around this person. Like all the time, like holy shit, And even certain activities, the things I thought I liked. I was like, I love doing that. It's like, actually I feel pretty crappy every time I do that. Surprise. So anyways, we're going to have to wrap it up. I wanted to make one announcement. Wanted to ask you guys for a favor or an opportunity to really thank Juliana Sloan, who is not here tonight, which is why we could say this. But Juliana is the woman that's usually here who's taking care of everything. And is just the hardest working woman in show business. Hardest working woman in the Dharma business. Speaking of opening the center, she did a ton to make this happen, and really does a ton to run this place, and she's always here, and really just does it out of the love she has for this community, and really deep love for all of us. And she works way more than what the hours she's actually getting paid to do. And I know all of you that have ever dealt with her know how much how hard she tries and how much effort she puts in. So we thought that, our 1-year anniversary is coming up at the end of next month. And so we thought we would surprise her with a gift from the Sangha. We thought we would get her like a spa treatment or something like that, like a massage or something. So tonight we'll have the regular Dana basket that helps the center and the teachers. But we're just going to put out another one, and if you could just, a couple of dollars, there's like 70 people here. If a couple people put in a couple of bucks, that'll be more than enough. So, just really invite you to kind of express that gratitude. And luckily she's not here, although she's not going to watch. What's that? She's not. I thought about it, but she's actually on a plane right now. She's, because I talked to her earlier, she was on a layover. So she's on a plane right now. And I hope she is, actually I know she is busy enough that it's not like she's then going to go on YouTube. And she probably wouldn't make it this far in the video. Yeah, that's fine. It's fine. So, if you guys would be generous to do that, and I don't know. I know there's all kinds of cool scheduling stuff, but she's the one that would know about that. So, I know there's like flyers on the desk there, and if you go to either the website or the Facebook page, we've got all kinds. I know the schedule is super busy right now. We have all kinds of day-longs and class series and all kinds of stuff to get nice and exuberant about. So just to close, bring your awareness back to your body. And again, just notice how it is right now. Notice how underneath all the thoughts and these stories and plans that are set in time, that there's this other level or this other dimension of experience that's timeless. It's very simple. It's not some mystical, esoteric thing. It's literally just this texture, just this kind of energetic, textural beingness that's just kind of happening. And it's not about anything. It's just being itself. It doesn't mean anything. It's not about anything. It's not, like I said, it's timeless. It's not really set in time. It's just in this perpetual now. It just goes, keeps going. And underneath all the thoughts and stories and personalized projections, this is always here. It's where we take refuge. This is what Buddhism at its core is about, is taking refuge in this ground of being. May the merit generated by us coming together like this as a community, as a sangha, to support each other's practice, each other's awakening, learning how to untangle ourselves from all the compelling thoughts and stories that our mind seduces us with. We dedicate and share this merit with beings everywhere. May we all be free. Thank you very much.